What if one day you went outside and you stood in the sun and you cast a shadow and you looked at that shadow and you observed it? You were mesmerized by it. You were fascinated by how it moved. You looked at it responding and moving and changing, and you just started really staring at that shadow. What if one day you forgot that you were staring at the shadow? What if you started to be really, really bothered by what was going on with the shadow, but you didn't say, look at what's going on with the shadow. You started to say, look at what's going on with me. What if you forgot that you're the one standing there with the sun at your back? And what if you thought that you were this shadow and only this shadow? And what if you saw yourself from the perspective of the shadow? You believed yourself to be the shadow. And you believed that everything that happened in the world of dark, shady figures was your world. And that not only were you living only in this world, but it was somehow now you alone against this world. And somehow it was your burden to fix this world. And you had to fix the shadow figures around you and the shadow job and the shadow economy and the shadow bank account. And you had to fix it yourself. And you was just struggling, reaching. Why can't I fix it? What if, in a different situation, what if one day you were staring at your reflection in the mirror and you observed everything that this reflection did? And you became so mesmerized by the reflection, you started to think, I am this. This is my hand, that's my hand. And you saw yourself as that person and you forgot who you were. What if at that point you wanted to change something in what you saw? What if you wanted to change the clothes you were wearing? What would you do? What if on another day you were an actor who got a very long role in a very long play? And you went on stage and you were dressed, to use Rupert Spira's specific analogy, which I think is great. You were dressed as King Lear, and your name is John Smith, but the actor is John Smith, but you get on stage as King Lear, and you're dressed in his regalia and his sword and his whatever, and you're living his life and you're fighting his wars. And what if one day you're so into King Lear's story that you forget that you are John Smith in the role of King Lear, and you forget that the stage is a limited part of your world? What if you forget? And what if there's something that you wanted to change in that story? What would you do? Or, and I promise this is the last one, what if you fell asleep and you dreamt a dream, a beautiful dream, and you dreamt that you were someone else, that you were just another person in another world living a beautiful life? And what if you completely forgot that you fell asleep somewhere and that you're dreaming this dream? And what if you believe that I am this person? I am only this person. And this is my world. This is my entire world. This is the only world. And my abilities within this world are the only abilities I have. But what if at this point something happens in the dream and you don't like it? You're scared, you're seemingly stuck, and you've seemingly run out of options. What do you do? In all of these scenarios, the answer is you contact the true self. You remember that the one that you say I am is not the fullness of your I am. It is not your entire being, and therefore it is not your accurate perspective, and it is not your full power. I hope one of these metaphors resonated with you, because that is what is happening in our lives. We've already established what the problem is, and the problem is the fact that we have become identified as separate, isolated, vulnerable beings that are broken and that must fix ourselves. And what we're trying to figure out here is, what is the solution? How do we fix ourselves? And what I'm going to the shortcut answer that's going to save you decades and decades of fumbling around and exhaustion and frustration is, you cannot fix what you don't understand. We spent a lot of time looking at what the problem is so that you can understand that the problem is your perception, your perspective of the world, your perspective of the problem. Because let's be honest, you don't actually fully understand what the problem is, and your perspective of yourself. What am I, and what am I in relation to everything else? And is it possible that there's more to me, more to the world? And is it possible that that thing is willing and able to help? That's the problem. The problem is that your consciousness, what you perceive yourself to be and who you allow yourself to act as, is shrunk into a very limited misunderstanding. And now the misunderstanding, with the best intentions in the world and the greatest efforts, is trying to fix itself. And it cannot really be done. So let's talk about what we think, what is just natural. We can't be blamed for this. What we think healing looks like. We think healing looks like, I need to do some more self-care. I need to spend more time on myself. Or I need to go to therapy and I need to talk about what's wrong, and I need to explore and analyze until I find an aha moment that can fix it. Or I need to do physical stuff to either change my body, go to the gym, or release things from inside of me, somatic healing, tapping, all those things. Or I need to do energetic stuff, again, somatic or tapping or energy work or Reiki. And not a single one of these things are wrong. Not one of them are wrong. They are helpful, but they can only fix what was caused by the problem. They cannot fix the problem. The problem is a consciousness rift. The problem is not even, for simplicity's sake, let's say the problem is separation. You have become separated from who you truly are, and you are fighting up to figure it out on your own. But the truth is, you cannot be separated from who you are. The sun cannot be separated from the sun. A beam of sunlight cannot be separated from the sun. A speck of sunlight cannot be separated from the sun. You still are connected to the sun. So what is the actual problem? You perceive yourself as being separate from the sun, from what you truly are. You think that you're separate from your spirit nature, or the part of you that exists and functions and understands at the level of spirit in the spirit world. And you think that you're separate from the big thing, the Maha spirit, the great spirit. God, I know that there's a lot of misunderstanding and pain and anger and resentment towards that concept, but that is the wound. I'm not trying to get you to go back to an old school understanding of God or to go back to the religion that you were raised in. I'm not trying to get you to do that, but I'm trying to get you to understand that the belief that you are on your own, that you have to figure it out, and there's nothing else that's helping you. And if it is helping you, I don't need that help because that's messed up stuff. I can figure this out on my own. That perspective, the place that you're standing from, is the problem. The angle that you're looking at the situation from is the problem. The fact that you see that the problem that you're dealing with is this way and this shape and this is what I have to fix is the problem. So you can go to all these different healing modalities and go to all these healers that are helping. Yes, of course, they're helping a bit, but they're not going to understand the problem. If you don't understand the problem, if you go to a doctor, one of the reasons it's really hard to treat young children is because we don't actually know what they're presenting, what is wrong. They don't have the words to say it because they don't understand their bodies. They don't understand how their bodies are supposed to be. So they can't describe what is wrong. If you go to the doctor and the doctor says, explain to me what's wrong. And you say, well, doctor, every time I poke my head, it hurts. There's pain. And doctor's like, okay, is anything else wrong? And you say, well, every time I poke my shoulder, there's pain. And okay, I'm going to take a note of that and we'll see what we can figure out. Is there anything else that's wrong? And you say, well, yeah, doctor, every time I poke my nose, there's pain. And you're sending the doctors and healers that you're working with on a chase, trying to figure out what's wrong with your head, your shoulder, and your nose. But what you're not understanding is that your finger is broken and that the pain is coming from the pointing. I know this video is riddled with metaphors, but the ironic thing about the spiritual awakening journey is that it's not something that you're going to get logically. It's something that you're going to remember deep inside of your soul, inside of your spirit, with aha moments where you go, wait, chills, resonance. There either I feel chills or I hear a ringing or I feel an absolute still peace and I realize, whoa, I remember that. That's true. I remember that. And that's not coming from me making you remember. It's coming from the spirit within you, the very thing that you have forgotten, going, oh, right. Well, making you go, oh, right. Yes. Okay. Yes. I forgot. If you are that person standing outside in front of the sun with your back to the sun, and you're casting a shadow and you've been looking at the shadow and you've become really mesmerized with the shadow, you've become identified with the shadow and you're trying to fix the shadow, and you turn to me and you say, my life is a mess, what should I do? The only responsible thing for me to do would be to gently walk up to you and touch or get you to perceive and to feel the part of the being that is not the shadow, and say, hey, you're this. And something will happen inside of you, but it's been decades that you've been mesmerized by this thing that you believe, this layer of perception that you believe yourself to be. So it's not going to happen overnight, but you're going to be like, wait, I feel more of me. There's a part of me I cannot touch. There's a part of me I do not understand. There's a memory and I don't know what's in memory of. That's the disorienting part of it, but it won't last forever because, again, you are not a human being trying to remember what it's like to be divine. You are spirit remembering what you already are. Okay, what does this have to do with healing? What this has to do with healing is that the problem, just to explain the terms that we're using, right? You are consciousness. You can use the word spirit, same thing. You are consciousness. You came into a physical world to have a temporary physical experience. You have a body, you have a mind, but you are consciousness or you are spirit. That's what you are. But you became your awareness. You can say awareness and consciousness, same thing. The awareness that you have, what's going on in life, it started to look at only one thing, and then it started to say, I am what I'm looking at, and then it started to identify as that. That's called the ego. And the ego is a collection of memories and fears and pain bodies. It's not your true self. And life gets more and more complicated because the ego, that is a misunderstanding of or a memory of things that you haven't healed, starts to twist and then starts to try to fix itself and twist more until you have this really strained knot. But, and this is just defining the terms here, but what you actually are, the real you, the memory, the where am I, how am I, what am I am the eternal divine that is like perfectly well observing this world and experiencing everything that happens in this world. And I am realizing that there's this messed up sense of self, primarily identified with pain or lack or isolation and vulnerability, that has been governing my life that I used to think was me. That thing that I just described is what we will now call the self. The self, well, let's call that the higher self, okay? Ego, we looked at that. We know what that is. We looked at the pain bodies and how that forms. We looked at dysfunction number 1, 2, 3. And now we're understanding that there's a higher part of us. There's a part of us that never got trapped. There's a part of us that never forgot. There's a part of us that never got mesmerized by the pain body and all of its effects. That is the higher self. That is the part of you. It is you, and it's higher because it hasn't forgotten. It isn't suffering from pain. It isn't carrying sadness. It isn't carrying grief. It isn't angry. It is not limited by the belief that it is only human. It is still aware of the fact that it is spirit. It is still aware of the fact that it is consciousness, and it is still connected to everything else, and it is still experiencing its true nature. That is your higher self. Okay? So, ego, higher self. There is consciousness is not divisible. To use an old metaphor to revisit it, if you put cake in a pan and you slice the cake, you have 2 slices of cake. If you put water in a pan and you slice the water, you have 1 water. If you put air in a pan and you slice the air, you have 1 air. If you put consciousness in a pan and you slice it, you don't have many human beings. You have consciousness, spirit. Spirit is not divisible. Source, not divisible. Universe, not divisible. God, not divisible. And I'm going to try not to touch that word, because then it comes with all the, yeah, but what about, and then this person said, okay, fine. Let's go with consciousness. Clean words, spirit, clean words, right? They don't come with any baggage, really. When you start to detect your higher self, which is the part of you that is connected to spirit, you will detect that the higher self in you, everybody has a higher self. The higher self in you and the higher self in others are not entirely separate. And you will detect that the higher self it's not just a bigger part of you that is going to go now and knock on God's door. So first you went from being a little tiny human going, hey, God, help me out, to being this big higher self who's like, hey, God, help me out. No. The higher self in you is an aspect of the great self, the one consciousness, the one spirit, the ultimate level of consciousness, the one that does not have any separation, limitation, or problem whatsoever. So, why is this important? I always warn against trying to get too lost in definitions. Like, it's weird. It's a weird combination, a delicate balance where, like, I have to understand what's going on. But if you go too far in that direction, you're going to become obsessed with intellectually defining things. And then you're going to go, sit in ashrams and ask really, really complicated questions and forget that the purpose is to heal your experience. That's why in the very beginning, I asked, what do you want? Come back to what you want. I want my life experience, the moment to moment experience of my life to be well. Okay. In order to do that, you have to end the emotional and mental suffering. Okay. In order to do that, you have to purge the pain bodies. To purge the pain body is to shift your awareness from the layer of your being that is the ego to the layer of your being that is higher. The problem that needs to be fixed is the identification with the ego, the belief that you are the ego, the perceptions and viewpoints and beliefs and baggage that the ego carries. If that is the problem, then the solution is to bring in a higher level of consciousness, to allow the higher level of consciousness to show you a new perception, a new range of powers, and a new sense of being. The solution is not for the ego to try to fix the ego. The solution is for the higher level of consciousness, be it the higher self or the self, whichever level you feel comfortable connecting with. It's for a higher level of consciousness to come in and remind you that you are not this limited experience. You are not you're not a little scared being standing in a moment in time that bothered you a lot. And you are not living in a world that's trying to hurt you in the same way over and over again. You are so much more than that. That is the solution, because that is the problem. And if the illness that you're suffering from is a constricted consciousness, then the solution, the healing of that illness, is the expanded consciousness, the greater consciousness. We will do practical workshops to experientially understand this, because it is, if you try to understand it, if you say, I will allow this when I fully understand it, and I could write a thesis on it, then you're going to create a barrier for yourself. The only reason you need to understand it a bit is so that you trust it enough to try it. But when you try it and you allow that higher consciousness to glow and spread, you're going to realize, yes, this is who I am. I remember now. I remember. And once you remember a little bit, you allow a little bit more. And when you remember more, you allow more. And when you remember more, you allow more. And it's a beautiful self-fulfilling cycle that takes over. But for now, you have to trust the process enough to even allow it to begin with. And all of this is to say that the problem is the limited, the wound that you're trying to fix is the limited contracted consciousness. And all of your efforts to fix it are coming from the place of the limited contracted consciousness. And therefore, you cannot actually achieve what you want, because you're the wrong level of your being is trying to do it. So you must absolutely 100%, no way to escape this, must allow a higher consciousness to help you. And in time, you'll understand that, okay, there's one big, huge, indivisible consciousness. But if the concept of God makes you uncomfortable, then let it consider your higher self, the higher self within me. If that makes you uncomfortable, then say, okay, God, or say the perception and awareness of God within me, the spirit of God. Whatever part of that you're okay with, start where you're okay. You'll figure out and understand how all of those things are connected when the time is ready. But for now, just know that there's some level of knowing, a being of more understanding and therefore more ability that can fix this. And the first and only step that you need to take is to allow this being to help. This being is bigger, more capable, loving, generous, and just glowing. Whether you perceive it as light or you perceive it as love, it is constantly beaming this, because that is what it is. You don't go and ask the sun to turn on, and you don't go and ask love to turn on. You don't ask God to turn on. You don't ask spirit to turn on. This being is, and it is willing, and it is helping. That part is done. Tick. The only part that needs to be done is you have to ask and allow and let it, allow it. And the only way to allow it is to step aside, to create some space, and to say, shine, glow, flow, heal, fix. Not only fix my problem. And that's the other thing we'll learn in the workshop, is not only do you have to allow this consciousness, this self with a capital S, to shine in your life, but you actually kind of have to not tell it what to do. It knows. You don't have to say, hey, go fix this person and then get rid of that, and don't forget the job, and I also need money. Oh, and don't forget my knee because it really hurts. Allow the self to do what the self wants to do, what the self knows you need to do. And the reason I say that is because what if even 10% of what you think is wrong is not actually wrong in the way that you think it's wrong? What if your skewed understanding, your biases and perceptions and pains and filters that you carry with you might possibly be giving you a misunderstanding of the problems? So just make room for that possibility and say, you know what? I don't need to insult the highest intelligence in the universe by telling it what I need. I'm just going to allow it. I don't have to tell the sun I need warmth, and I don't have to tell the sun, hey, sun, don't forget that plant needs to live and that plant needs to live. And if you could give that plant a little boost there, and if you could warm up the pool over there. No, you metaphorically open the curtains and let the sun shine, and the sun by its nature knows what to do with its nature. So this is a long video. I appreciate your patience. You're not going to figure it out with your mind or your logic. You're going to remember it deep inside of your spirit in moments of stillness, in moments of peace. Allow those moments of stillness. Allow, through meditation and stillness and prayer, allow the noise that you have become identified with, the thinking, the identity, the problems, the world, the analysis, allow that to just become still for a sec. And even if it's for 1 second, you will experience the self. That's when you experience aha moments. That's when you experience chills. That's when you experience remembering. And you go, I remember, I trust, I remember, it's making sense. It's all coming back to me now. And stretch it. Let it be 10 minutes a day, twice a day. 10 minutes a day, twice a day. I'm telling you. And I know that there are people in this group who can, attest to that 10 minutes twice a day can change your life in a month. Flip it completely. Change your experience of life. It really can. Allow that higher consciousness and say, you know what? I've done all I can do. It's not failure to let go. It's not giving up to surrender. I'm going to allow something higher to come in and to transform. Just try that. I'm going to do a challenge next week. I want you to join me with it. Let's do 10 minutes, 3 times a day for 1 week, for 5 days, morning, noon, and night. 10 minutes. Sit with the self. Sit as the self. Allow the self. Let that glow spread through you. Ask nothing, try nothing, do nothing, and just be. Just be for 10 minutes. Morning, noon, and night for 5 days. And then come back and tell me, how are you? Thanks for watching, everyone.